There are some cars that you see them at first sight and you get all weak in the knees and hot under the collar. And there's other ones that you just look at them and go, wow! And this one, it's a bit of both. What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another car review here on the driveway, where this week it is a whole new beginning for me, as finally we have partnered up with our friends at Genesis, who have sent us over one of their latest and most beautiful creations that they've ever made. As we all know, SUVs and crossovers are big right now, so they have sent us the 2022 GV70, and not just any GV70 either. This one packs a twin turbocharged 6-cylinder all-wheel drive, and in comparison to something European, I don't know, BMW, Audis, Mercedes, Porsches, you name it, this is a relative bargain compared to those. And there's no easy way for me to say this. The one I'm sitting in, it's $64,000 plus. So yeah, but what you get for that money is just as good a quality as the Germans, but in a much more unique package. But what does that mean if you want to drive this thing everywhere? Well, let's hit the start button and find out. You know, it's so amazing to think these days that we have vehicles in our arsenal that could be the jack of all trades. It may look like an ordinary family vehicle. It may have enough space for you, your wife, or husband, and the kids. And it also has enough power to feel like you're turning the earth backwards at the same time. Now, although this doesn't have 1,000,000 horsepower, or it's certainly not as powerful as something from Europe, this is by all accounts a true enthusiast's SUV. And let me just start with the good stuff. The good stuff is twin turbocharged 3.5-liter V6 up front with an 8-speed automatic in the middle, although I'm not really a fan of the way you shift it with this turned aluminum and glass rotary dial here. And it's also all-wheel drive. Now, I said it's not as powerful as something, say, from the Germans, but it is still no slouch on the road. This thing makes 375 horsepower and just a hair shy of 400 foot-pounds of torque. And believe me, even at 4,500 pounds for this one here, this thing will get down the road in a real hurry. Now, as glamorous as this thing might be, fortunately, it's not without its drawbacks. No machine is ever going to be perfect. And this one, well, your biggest drawback is gas mileage. It may be a little bit of a different story if you go for the 2.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder that you can get in the lesser expensive one. But if you're the sort of person who's fuel economy minded, this is not the car for you. On a good day, 19 in the city, 25 on the highway. And just to prove that, I've gone through a full tank of gas in under a week, averaging right around 16.5 to 17 combined. The other thing that's been a little bit of an annoyance to me, and I've done this on more than one occasion just in the week that I've had this thing, is going back to that rotary shifter here in the center console. It is right behind about the same size rotary dial that you would use to control the infotainment system. And it is so annoying when I try to go put this car in drive or put this car in reverse, and suddenly I'm switching from my navigation to my Bluetooth media. I'm not dumb, but yeah, definitely not my favorite thing about this car, and certainly something I think that would confuse a lot of people. Now, even with these small little problems I have with this thing, it goes without saying, this is one of the nicest less obvious choices that you could possibly look at in the premium crossover segment. And in many ways, this car is completely idiot-proof. Aside from the shifter and the placement of the infotainment knobs, things like the highway driving assist, it's one button. You push it on the steering wheel, the lane follow, lane tracing, you know, everything turns on all in one go. It is so simple. And not to mention, the adaptive suspension is buttery smooth. Even though this is a sport prestige, you would think it would be a little bit firmer on the ride quality. It's not, but when you want it to, it will wake itself up in a heartbeat and give you that sort of enthusiast driving experience that you're looking for. Oh, damn! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Wow! That torque is just addicting. It's like catching the perfect wave. You just ride it off into the sunset. And when you put it in Sport Plus, like I am now, you don't even have to be all the way up into the top of the rev range. This thing has torque for days, no matter where you are on that tachometer. And I freaking love it. The forward collision warning is a bit annoying because the vehicle in front of me is way off in the distance and it still picks it up as if it was right in front of me. Again, idiot proof. So now comes the obvious question. You're in the market for a premium, small to medium sized crossover, and the question becomes, do you go with something more obvious like the brands I mentioned before, or do you kind of adventure out a little bit and get into something that offers just as much exhilarating performance, technology, comfort, and really all the luxury you could want at a fraction of the cost? For me, the answer is a resounding yes. I would take the Genesis over any of the other obvious choices, even though some may be more powerful, some may be more obvious. You know, this just feels so complete in the way it's put together. And I'll tell you what else makes it feel complete. It's the way it looks. Now, what's amazing about Genesis in today's modern design language is the fact that even though they have prided themselves for years on being not just another luxury arm of a mainstream brand, it seems like in their quest to be a lot more unique, they've pulled design cues from some of today's other much higher end brands. Like, for example, at the front of it, I kind of see Genesis's twist on a modern Bentley. The giant chrome-laced grille, the design of the front bumper along the bottom, even down to the design of the headlights. Although they're not circular like you'd find on a Bentley, they still have sort of that Bentley-esque look to it. If you look at it from the side, it sort of has the silhouette of a Porsche Macan, something like that. And then if you look at it straight on from the back, it sort of has remnants of Audi's Q series SUVs. So again, in their attempt to be much more unique, it seems like they've drawn inspiration from some really high-end places. I mean, look at the headlights on this thing. They're beautiful LED strips. You got your high and low beams on either side, your turn signals and daytime running lights right through the middle, auto high beam assist and stuff like that goes on there as well. We have the front park assist that goes across the front and rear, again part of the massive options list on this. And talking about massive, look at the size of the grille. It takes up about 80% of the front of the car. It's just absolutely huge, and of course it is drenched in chrome just like you would expect. This one does come with the optional 360 camera, and I also like sort of little touches like the black trim along the bottom of the bumper, and also things like the air skirts which go right through the front of the bumper and exit right out here just in front of the front wheels. Now, going back to that comparison that I just made, this car is about 185.5 inches long, which means on paper, it's about a half an inch shorter than a Porsche Macan. But like I said, you look at it directly from the side and it looks dead on, just like its German competition. But what grabs my attention more than anything else is what is right here. Look at these guys, 21-inch sport design aluminum alloy wheels. They are a part of that sport prestige package, so if you want some real style and looks to this car, I would opt for that package without a doubt. These are wrapped in some serious rubber too. These are 255 40 section Michelin tires. Now, of course, with any high-end car like this, it's not just the styling that impresses, but the technology that goes with it. For example, on this car, it's the little things that also count. Like when I walk up to it with the key in my hand, you notice the mirrors automatically come out to greet me. Now, not only do the mirrors fold out, but they also have little puddle lamps underneath that project the Genesis logo right here in front of the front doors. Again, it's little stuff like that that impresses much more than some of the bigger options, things like the power folding mirror mechanisms with body colored side view mirrors and the LED turn signals, the cameras, the gloss black, a lot of stuff you'd think of on a much higher end vehicle. And also things like the panoramic sunroof that we have on this one here. Now, what's cool about the GV70 is that although on the 4-cylinder turbo models, which are obviously less expensive, this panoramic roof is an option. If you go for the 3.5 like this one, that becomes standard. And then we get to Genesis's advanced keyless access system. Now, they call this the proximity key, and a lot of the buttons are pretty familiar. You have lock, unlock, the power tailgate, panic. You can turn on the lights from the exterior in certain cases, and you also have a factory remote start. Now, of course, all that's great, but one of the coolest things to come out of Korea within the past couple of years is, of course,
Smaht Pahk.
Smaht Pahk?
Smaht Pahk.
Smaht Pahk!
But like any other smart key you'd find pretty much on any vehicle, it all works just via touch. You can either use the buttons on the remote, or you could just have it on your person anywhere. As you can see right now, I've locked the car back up. If you want to unlock it, just grab the handle. Or you can lock it back using the little indented portion on either one of the front handles. Now, as polarizing as the front of this car might be, when you look at it from the rear, again, going back to kind of that comparison list I was talking about before, I see something a little bit more simplistic. And it also carries, again, a very sort of European-esque, something like an Audi Q5 or Q7, except on this, these LED taillight and turn signal combinations here are two separate pieces. They cover both the tailgate and the outside of the car, versus like on a Q5, for example, they cover the tailgate in its entirety. Now, that's not a bad thing though, because details like the fact that they've spelt out Genesis on the tailgate instead of sticking that giant winged badge up here, say just above that, for example, it just cleans up the back end of this car so much more, and I really, really like that. Now, if you can't find your reverse lights, that's no problem. They're actually down here on the lower diffuser here. Now, what is not so shocking is that on a big engine car like this, you need a big exhaust, and as you can see, it has a huge dual exhaust. Well, kind of, because if you look in here, the pipe is still way, way there in the back, so these aren't actually the real exhaust, but nevertheless, when you start this thing up and give it the beans, it still sounds really good. Now, bearing in mind that people who buy into this sort of brand don't want just a regular run-of-the-mill car. They want something a little more sophisticated, a little something more extra. And in a nod, to, again, to the Porsche Macan, instead of reaching down here under the rear tailgate to find your trunk latch, it's actually hidden here up under the rear wiper blade. And when you actually peep into the back here, you're looking at a pretty sizable amount of cargo volume. Behind the second row, you're looking at 28.9 cubic feet, which is more than enough, as you can see, for all the odds and ends that I have back here. And you even have a nice little bit of extra space just under the floor. Now, if space is really your thing, you can reach back here, grab hold of these handles, and pop down that second row of seats, and suddenly you're looking at 56.9 cubic feet of cargo volume total. And I will tell you, this thing can haul a lot more than you think. Yeah, that opening might not be the biggest in the entire class, but when my girlfriend and I recently took a trip to the scrap metal yard to recycle some aluminum cans, we literally filled from the back of those seats all the way to this rear lip in garbage bags full of aluminum cans. I will tell you, it was a tight squeeze, but we managed to make it fit. So again, cargo volume and luxury, what could be a better combination? Now you would think with as beautiful and curvaceous as this car is and the blistering performance that it offers, that the place where you spend the most time would be equally as beautiful. Well, you just open the door and look inside and you are 100% right. This is by far one of the nicest premium interiors that I've ever gotten in any car under $100,000. I mean, look at this. We've got Alcantara, we've got leather, a very unique color might I add. Notice ultramarine. Instead of a black, it's almost like a beautiful, very deep slate blue. And it's kind of weird seeing it with the red, first off, but that's just kind of a nitpicky thing. But instead of wood, you have carbon trim in this case. It's on the doors, it's on the middle console here. You've got the red stitching, you've got red seat belts. It is just the perfect combination of luxury and sporty. And luxury doesn't even begin to start it. I mean, look, the steering wheel is full leather wrapped. You've got a heated steering wheel in this one with a red stitched leather airbag. Love that. It does have things like heated, ventilated seats for both sides. You've got the Ergo Motion driver's seat with a multi-way massage function and all the power adjustments you could want. I mean, what more could you ask for a bargain price under 100 grand? You've got a power tilt and telescoping steering column. I love the other little details like the silver tips on the end of the indicator and wiper stalks, the gloss black where it's integrated flushly with buttons like your auto start stop, hill descent control, traction control, and your instrumentation dimming. Now, it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that once you sit yourself inside the cockpit of any new Genesis product, but especially the one we have here, it is like stepping into someone's ultra luxurious living room. And again, it just goes back to me saying it blows my mind the fact that all of this comes out of Korea. You would think this would belong on like a $100,000 Mercedes or Lexus or Audi or BMW, where they pride themselves on craftsmanship. But this, I mean, just look down to the steering wheel. The buttons are all flush. All these highway driving assist buttons where, again, you just push one button and everything activates itself. Hands-free Bluetooth, radio favorites, even down to the little knobs for the volume control and the Seek track. And same thing over here on the other side. It's just beautiful. And I love the paddles on the back of the wheel. They're nice and big. They got a nice little click to them when you pull them. You have a massive heads-up display at the top. You have a 12.3-inch 3D digital gauge cluster in this one, and an over 14-inch infotainment display. If that's not enough to sway you that this thing is worth almost 65 grand, I don't know what is. Now, if you like your infotainment screen to be about as big as this vehicle's price tag, then the GV70 has you covered there again. This screen at over 14.5 inches from corner to corner is the biggest infotainment screen display that I've ever come across in any vehicle I've ever driven. Now, just like a lot of other premium cars, it is able to be controlled one of two ways. Surprisingly, it's actually touchscreen. You could scroll through all the menu options just like any other Genesis, Hyundai, or Kia product out there on the market. But once you go back to home, navigation menu, Bluetooth media streaming, you have HD radio, Sirius XM radio, Bluetooth connectivity, Genesis connected services. You can even go into some more interesting things like the sounds of nature, where you could just put on your favorite sounds such as a rushing river or a roaring campfire, and you can just sit back and relax. But then there are some oddballs, like you can control passenger seat controls or your own driver's seat controls from the touchscreen. You can go into the climate settings, which I honestly have no idea why they did this. The dual zone climate control is a touchscreen in and of itself right down below the main display here, and it does everything exactly as you'd want. Again, also with things like the 360 camera, for example, I pop it into reverse. There's your 360 monitor over here on the right. You have your backup camera over here on the left. You can even control what type of camera you want. You want to look out the sides? That's fine. You want to look more widescreen or top down? You can do that too. And the same thing applies when you put it in drive. There's your front view camera. You could switch down to the sides or a top down camera for parking. Anything you want, it can all be done. But my favorite thing about this camera is watch this. Now you have a three-dimensional setting of the vehicle in the color in which it's in, sitting there on your display, and it moves as you do. How cool is that? Of course, it's not all glitz and glamour in here. To be honest with you, I honestly don't really like the GPS map, even though I think it is one of the better ones out there on the market, but it still has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, wireless charging. It has all of that on board. So systems like GPS Nav, I think, are just a lost art at this point. I don't really think they're the most reliable systems in the world, but at the same time, you kind of get what you pay for. Now, as much as I enjoy having more screenage than a gamer setup in here, from the giant infotainment to the 3D gauges, the heads-up display, and so on, one thing that always matters to me, you guys know what it is the sound system. And this one genuinely impressed me, with a little bit of a concern, things like the fact that it doesn't sound the most bassy when you want it to, but I guess that also depends on the quality of the music you're playing. But we have a 16-speaker Lexicon premium audio system as part of that Sport Advanced package that I was talking about earlier. And let me tell you guys, if you like your surround sound, this one does not disappoint. Of course, all the comforts in the world don't just go to the people sitting up in the front. You look in the back of the GV70, and not only do you have a pretty sizable amount of space for at least 2 or 3 people back here, but again, everything is just built to a much higher standard. Before we even get to the features, look at things like the speaker grills, this beautiful turned mesh aluminum here. I just love things like that, but there are some basic necessities like your manual sunshades that go up across the windows. It's always a nice thing to have. The rear seats, they do recline, so you have the little lever here on the bottom. You can tilt them forward or backward, but then once you actually get in and actually sit back here, okay, sitting behind myself, there's not the greatest amount of room ever. But then again, I am rather tall, so that is a little bit of a downside in some cases. But let's say your passenger is a little too tall as well, and I was sitting behind them. I can just simply move them forward on my own accord. I can even lift the front of their seat up a little bit if I wanted to. So, while you can't do that for the driver, obviously that would be too much of a distraction, you can at least do that for the passenger, which is kind of neat as well. But you also come down here to the bottom, and you have a full touch panel back here for all of the third zone of the climate control system, including rear heated seats. You have the turned aluminum dials for the rear half of the climate. You can do basically everything that you can do up in the front, but in a much more luxurified fashion with the third zone here in the back. You also have a nice little set of USBs down in the bottom, and a household style 115 volt, 150 watt outlet plug here in the back as well. So, needless to say, if you're sitting in the back, at least you aren't missing out on all the creature comforts like what you might find up in the front. And with all that being said, this now concludes our review and drive of the 2022 Genesis GV70. By far and away, my biggest thanks of all for this entire opportunity goes to Genesis themselves. They have created something absolutely stunning here, and considering the price point in comparison to some of the other choices out there, this would definitely be my top pick. But if you guys enjoyed this review, or perhaps you learned something today, please give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit that subscribe button down below, because trust me, it will benefit the both of us at the end. But at the end of the day, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I'll see y'all next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.